green button. All right, let's see if that works. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a number of related things. Our future reality lab, you can buy the t-shirts. We kind of was inspired by, a number of us read this book in 2006. Has anyone ever read Rainbow's End by Werner Vinci? He basically says it's 40 years in the future. That's what you do in science fiction. You say it's 40 years in the future, and then by the time anybody can prove you wrong, they've already forgotten. So he says 40 years in the future, we're all going to pop in the contact lenses in the morning, and what inspired us about this is that it's not a vision of a world where we're physically disconnected. It's not like, Ready Player One. It's a world where we're physically in our bodies, but our senses are enhanced. We all found this to be very inspiring because you want people to still physically gather together. We certainly don't want to replace that. And so we started doing a bunch of experiments. That's me from about a decade ago when I looked a lot younger, and we are basically sort of faking it. I basically would get up there and give talks, and I'd be doing this in the air, and the neck would be tracking me, and we'd see the projection behind me, as though we had this sort of interactive hologram. And that inspired a whole bunch of different research projects in our lab. And our lab is basically, Future Reality Lab is part of the computer science department at NYU. We collaborate with everyone in the New York area, art schools, engineering programs, and music technology, and theater. And we basically are trying to say, let's just build prototypes of what things might be like. So for the last 5 years, really started, I would say, in 2014. 2014, we basically, that's when the Gear VR came out. The Gear VR, anybody use the Gear VR? Yeah, the Gear VR. Gear VR was basically the first thing you could really afford that had low latency rotational tracking, so it didn't make you sick. And so we basically took that, put it together with a motion capture stage, Optitrax, and so people could walk around in the same room, see each other in their actual physical locations, but as avatars of themselves. So we started doing this in 2014. On the left you see we have a whole exhibit at SIGGRAPH 2015 where people would draw in the air together as a social experience. And then since then we did lots of different projects. We had people play games together, we did dance performances, we had people dress up as though they were robots in a dance party, flocks of birds, celebrating Day of the Dead, and we'd invited in a whole bunch of artists to start creating these visions of what it might be like if you were in a world where you could just put on your headset and it was the future and we could see each other as whatever we wanted. What's interesting about this is that in parallel to this, to people creating all these worlds, our computer science students started thinking, hey, we could teach math differently. We could teach physics. We could actually say, hey, right between you and me, as we're having the conversation in the room, there's the molecule, there's the DNA, there's the planets, there's whatever we want to talk about, there's data streaming in. And so this got a whole bunch of people thinking about social engagement face-to-face, but with a sensorily transformed world. And then that also brought us to a number of different places. We started saying, could we really scale this up so that everybody, hundreds of millions of people, could have shared experiences of virtual reality together? And so we started creating narrative experiences for people. We did one at this started out, Cave was a story from the Paleolithic times where we have 30 people in an audience, all wearing a untethered 6th degree of freedom inside-out track headset, basically like what the Oculus Quest does. And they can all see each other as avatars, they can all hear each other, see each other's head movements, and we're all transported together. And so we showed this at the SIGGRAPH conference in 2018 to several thousand people, 30 at a time. And then we showed it to the, at the Tribeca Film Festival to a few thousand people, several dozen at a time. And the interesting, I learned a lot about this. One thing I learned, which is very interesting, is when you show an experience at the SIGGRAPH Computer Graphics Conference, Whatever it is, it's a demo. When you show exactly the same thing at Tribeca, it's art. So now we do art. You get an IMDb, it's really cool. And so then we started branching out. The thing on the right there, we started doing the origin story for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We were inspired by it's about the 200th anniversary of essentially the birth of science fiction. Mary Shelley actually was one of the great literary lights. I think has influenced everybody. And again, we tried it, and now we started asking questions of, we'll try it with a quest, and we'll also try it with a Magic Leap, and we'll try to compare the different kinds of immersion. And there's a kind of a trade-off. In one sense, you are able to create any world you want that's all around you. In another sense, you're still in the physical world, but you're essentially creating what feel like shared holograms that we're all experiencing. But the one rule we always have for everything we do is that you have this consistent physical mapping between the physical space and the virtual space. So if Cindy's wearing a headset and I'm wearing a headset, and we're looking at each other, and we walk around, we see each other in the correct location, we hear each other's voice. And that's different from if we're both wearing an AR headset, because then of course we still feel like we're in the same physical world, but now there are these virtual objects that we all are having the same experience as. And we think that's really important. For example, in an educational setting, you still want to have the body language between people. You want to be able to have a sense of who's talking and what your relationship with them is. And I think that one thing that's very important about all this is I don't actually think that people talk about a tension between actual physical presence and virtual reality, but everybody in this room knows that classrooms, for many reasons, are not going away. There are many reasons why we physically gather together. It has to do with trust, it has to do with engagement. And so one of the real opportunities, now that we do have things like the Quest, which actually are portable and they're inexpensive and they don't require trackers and you can take them to any room, is the opportunity, instead of saying, oh, this replaces classrooms, make them part of classrooms. So we're in the classroom, let's just slip into virtual reality together, take a walk through the Taj Mahal or look at this city data or whatever. And I think that's a very, very rich use of VR that so far is really underexplored. And I have to say that Cindy and Cindy are like right there with that, and they have been the whole time. So there's that. And then the other thing, which we had a demo of here, which Facebook has been supporting, is these demos that I started giving back in 2010, 2011, started evolving into an entire language for visual expression, which is now open source. You can play with it online. It's called Chalk Talk. And the idea of Chalk Talk is you draw things, and it's a smart drawing program. The drawings then come to life and become programs, and you can start adding things to it. So if you want to teach music or physics or math or geography or anything, you can start adding little bits and pieces and then draw them and put them together. And the drawings you make become a simulation. And just where this came from is, how many people here, when they teach, have used drawing on a blackboard or whiteboard? How many people here, when they teach, have said, oh, I'm just going to open up a computer and show a simulation on the computer? So what I found is that neither one is satisfying, because when you draw on a whiteboard, you want to show things operating, but of course, the ink doesn't move, it just sits there. Although you have the narrative storytelling. I'm drawing, and as I'm drawing, I'm telling the story of my body, and I'm physically engaged. When you open up a program and you start showing something, well, that's not storytelling. You can't actually walk people through things in the same way. So Chalk Talk is a way of putting those together. I can be talking to my students and saying, well, I'm going to draw this, and then I'm going to draw that. And then the computer takes over and continues and shows the simulation or the thing that I built. So it's a way to try to get the narrative power of the whiteboard together with, hey, we can actually show the physics or show the chemistry or show the math, and the thing actually works. And then what we've been doing with Facebook support has been moving this into a shared multi-person VR experience. So the teacher and the students can all go into the same space together and have that experience. So meanwhile, I wanted to show where, I'm going to round out this talk by talking about where we are going now. And this is really something I wouldn't have ever dreamt of doing until the Quest came out, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to rethink everything. I teach a graduate graphics class every year. You get about 30 or 40 really good computer science PhD students at NYU. And this year I'm doing something radically different. They don't know it yet. But sometime in mid to late October, they think they're just writing WebVR, WebGL, but they're actually writing everything for WebVR. And so I'm going to hand them all a Quest. And every student is going to get a Quest for the rest of the semester with 2 controllers. And we're writing support software so that basically all the stuff that I talked about in those earlier slides is going to be available to all the students. When I put on my headset and you put on your headset, we're going to see each other in our correct location in the physical room. And all the people who are wearing it are going to be able to see each other as though it's a kind of extremely radical augmented reality. And then when they think about creating content for graphics, all the widgets, all the objects are persistent objects that as soon as I move something or create something, it's seen by everybody else in the room. We're going to build that support layer for them, the server and the object permanence and the registration. And so they're going to start thinking about, how do I make graphics as an inherently social activity? And the reason this ties back to the first slide is that fundamentally, when you think about the reason that Rainbow's End and Werner Vinge's vision was so exciting, was that right now the one thing we can't do is have a social face-to-face conversation, and there is the technology that can help us right between us. And so if we start getting the next generation of computer scientists fundamentally thinking that way, that this is a social, shared, face-to-face activity, they're going to start bringing that into the way they bring initiatives into education, industry, or anything they might do. And so our goal is to basically bring this out and then take it to the next step. By this coming SIGGRAPH, we're going to figure out how to make these full body avatars. So I put on my Quest and maybe put on a pair of shoes, and then we go anywhere, and we're full body avatars, and we're completely immersed, and we don't need external trackers. Because I think the external trackers, which is why I'm so excited that Facebook's going in this direction, are basically limiting things to people who are going into a space that's already set up for it. But what you really want is, eventually, you want students to be able to say, hey, I brought my equipment with me, I'm going into the classroom, we put this on, and it doesn't matter what classroom we're in, or if we're just studying at home or anything, we all bring the shared social VR with us. So that's the vision that we're building. We're making everything open source. We're looking for collaborators. We want to work with people who are in the arts, in education, in any sort of area where we say, hey, let's start with an open source web-based platform where we're all building shared worlds that are just available to anyone who can go to a URL. And I think that's kind of the idea of what I want to talk about, and I'd really like to spend the rest of the time getting feedback from people. Thank you.